listening to Kate of Gaia on Critical Mass Radio. The game is up. Now, it's our turn.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. This is Christopher again. I'm actually stepping in for the first hour while Kate is doing another interview. And I've taken it upon myself to have a very good friend of mine, Jerry F. Kirk, on the show. I met Jerry in 2010 on the phone, and we become extremely good friends. And he is actually a phenomenal individual when it comes to the law, as he's known it for many, many years. Interestingly enough, I talked to him about Kate's documents, and he began to get to have a flavor of using them in a few court cases he had recently. We weren't able to get the wording as various people have had in their situations recently, but we've got near it. So I'm going to pass you over to Jerry and let him explain his background, and then we'll carry on from there and have him talk about what happened. So, Jerry, explain a bit about your background and your, how you were brought up and your father and so on, and a few of the instances in the past where you've done your paperwork and you've got out the system as you knew it, and what happened recently.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks very much for allowing me to share with y'all. I do appreciate that, and I would like to point out that, through Chris's help, I've been able to receive some of the stuff that Kate has. I'm not on the Internet. I'm not connected as such. And the principles that Kate goes over in her letter with respect to contracts by Kate of Gaia, it's very resonant of what she is getting at. She is not using legalisms to explain what is going on, but she's got a whole lot of good stuff there. So this is what's attracted to me, because she's making it sort of easy for the average guy to understand it.
Okay.
I started at 5 years of age being taken by my dad, who was a member of the Bar Association. My mom was also an attorney, but she died when I was 3. But I started being taken to court by the time I was 5 years old. I certainly will not suggest to you at that age and for the years that followed after that I really knew what was going on, but I could see things, actions, movements, things of that nature, the way that the decorum of a court would proceed. Well, through the ensuing years after that, at about 12, that no longer occurred 4 times a year. It would only occur maybe once or twice a year. But then from the time of moving into, a little more older and teenagers, and as a teenager, and then moving forward with my life, I've been into a number of courtroom situations, from contract to eminent domain to going against the government. All kinds of things. And recently, I've been drug into their courtrooms, and absolutely nothing that I have ever seen in my life before is occurring. So this goes back to about 25 years ago, when various people that I knew, and I was on various radio shows and things like that in Central Florida, the Orlando area.
Yep.
And I told people then, as I've been telling them for the last 2.5 decades, there will reach a point where all the paperwork in the world that you submit to the courts will not work. And I may be approaching that stage of what's going on right now in 2 different courts.
Okay. Now, could you explain a little bit about certain cases that you've told me about that you've been involved with, like, for instance, the eminent domain case and the what happened in 1987 when you first did your notorious declaration?
Okay. Well, in 1987, which is, got to back up just a little bit, started doing some research on a subject in the state of Florida. And at that time, I was a citizen of the United States and a resident of Florida. I am not that way now, but I was then. I started doing some research on a particular case, trying to help some people. And there were 4 lawyers, 2 research people, a retired judge, and me in the room, and they would just bring me books as fast as they could. I seemed to have an ability to scan and read stuff fast. Mm-hmm. And one of the lawyers said, "We don't need to look this up." And I said, "No, the way my dad taught me, we always go back to the very beginning to find the answer." Well, by doing that, we discovered that in 1971, the Florida legislature, as abundance of wisdom, that they deleted the entire chapter in the Florida laws called municipal police power. They vacated every one of you. They said goodbye.
Okay.
No more, city cops. The entire chapter disappeared. So I did some research and continued, and so I wanted to go after the handicap parking. As my dad was paralyzed from the waist down, as my mom died from polio, as I have had polio 3 times and suffer from post-polio syndrome, I just don't believe in having a handicap parking space right at the front of a Walmart. People, get in there 100 feet, then they walk around for 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
So, it doesn't really make sense to me. So it was just a way to get them. So I found a situation where there were 4 uniformed cops in cars and 8 bicycle cops. So I thought that was a good time to park right in the handicap spot.
Okay.
So the day before I went to court, I filled out a notorious declaration declaring my allegiance to the Father, His only begotten Son, and the Father's laws. It was, if you will, a knockdown drag-out, but what the court in Orlando didn't know, that I had already had an attorney sitting at that moment with the Attorney General of the state of Florida, the Governor of the state of Florida, and other, officials.
Okay.
And letting them know that, guess what? All municipal police cases for over 20 years, I got a little date wrong there, for over 20 years are now out the window. People can get new trials if they want to play with me. So anyway, I had the Orlando City Police came to an agreement that they could only take people into custody. They could not arrest them and book them.
Okay.
So, that's, I didn't want to do this statewide and allow a bunch of criminals, actual criminals that rob banks, drugs, kidnapping, murder. I didn't want them to get out, get new trials. So, there has been a level of intensity. I had learned how to convene grand juries, did that twice, and never went to law school, and I'm certainly not a state attorney. Learned how to shut down the jails in Orlando at the Orange County Jail. Through that particular process, within 2 weeks of turning in documentation, the Orange County Commission voted an emergency $30 million bond issue to redo the jail. So, been in an eminent domain case where the attorneys thought that the most that they would get, because they were being paid by the state in Florida, they have to pay your attorneys down there, they thought the most they'd get is $50,000 to $75,000. I told them 3.5 years before the, rendering of their fees that they would get $500,000. They did get $500,000.
Okay.
So I've been involved in lots of different types of things, and mainly the reason I get involved in things is because I see something that's not right. And I'm one of these guys that, quite frankly, has been called crazy many, many times. And, if something's not right and it's in my backyard, I'm going to go do what I can. And so that's how my life has, evolved, if you will.
Okay. And going back to that case, the courtroom where you were in 1987, and you said that you had a notorious declaration on you. Can you explain exactly what that means, that word, notorious declaration? Okay.
Well, most everybody says, well, I don't know what a notorious declaration is. They all say that, yet everybody in what we'll call America, they've heard of the Declaration of Independence. A Declaration of Independence is one of the types of a notorious declaration. You're declaring where you belong. And in my case, I declared as well as I could that I was under the jurisdiction of the Father. Now, my original notorious declaration has been redone 2 or 3 times because I found errors in them. Quite frankly, I cannot tell you of any work that I've ever done that doesn't have any errors in them. But I am constantly hunting to try and get rid of those mistakes, to say the least.
Yep. And you've actually been able to, up to last year, remove yourself from the system. Explain to the listeners exactly what you did and what you've been able to achieve.
Well, in the year 2000, I revoked all contracts with the state of Arkansas, and I canceled my power of attorney on the title to what at that time was a motor vehicle. I reclassified that as a private conveyance, and the Father's law says unequivocally that we are not allowed to pay tribute, toll, or custom. Most people do not look up the word custom in the antiquity language, going back to the time of Christ, and find out that that means insurance. They do read where Matthew was removed from the desk or the receipt of custom by the Christ. You know, it doesn't say don't ever go there, but he removed him, got him out of the insurance racket. Nothing of any real substance occurred for 13 years. In other words, I conveyed around north central Arkansas for 13 years without having a member of law enforcement stop and give me a ticket or do any of these other games. Actually, it was in one accident. It was half my problem and half the other guy's problem. Sergeant and a corporal came out, no tag, no license, no insurance, no VIN number plate under the windshield. Explained to them it'd be, fraudulent to have a VIN number there. No tickets, no nothing, no nothing. However, in 2007, I also took this land and I deeded it back to the Father in heaven and His only begotten Son. This is explained to individuals in the book of Leviticus of how they can do this. Of course, your land has to be free and clear. And deeded it to the Father and His only begotten Son. Well, the government kind of got real upset about that, and then this past summer, and by the way, they refused to communicate at any level at any time. And, Senate was rather prolific of trying to communicate. Well, this past summer they held a tax deed sale, and they claimed, though I do not agree, that there was approximately $4,000 owed in back taxes, interest and fees, and all the other yada yada garbage. Well, I decided, after thinking about it, praying about it, whatever you want to say, that I should take that amount and give it out to the poor, half hour before they had a tax deed sale. That incensed the bullies. Okay. And so shortly after that, within a couple days after that, then they started stopping and ticketing me and threatening me and the whole 9 yards,
So you had your first traffic ticket, last August, around the time you had this sale, right?
Yeah, well, I think there was one just, a little earlier than that.
Okay.
I don't have all my dates in front of me. But it was just within just a couple days of me giving away money to the poor.
Okay.
And, we are instructed at times, the Christ tells us to, woe unto he that does not give a cup of water to one of these little ones. Give your raiment to somebody that needs it. So I said, okay, well, it's really going to hurt because I don't have much money. My dad always said if you're going to try and help and be involved in the word charity, you should give till it hurts. Well, $4,000 sure hurt me, but, I'm not complaining. I did what I needed to do.
Right.
And so, and then it's been, constant violence. People need to look up the word violence to understand that it can mean undue pressure, unjust pressure, and all these other things. It just doesn't mean somebody punching you in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
However, in 2010, I was pulled over by a member of law enforcement, turned on the siren and lights, and I got out, talked with him. He said, Jerry, I'm not here to give you a ticket or anything like that. He said, I'm here to tell you that there's all kinds of members of law enforcement in Arkansas talking about murdering you. This member of law enforcement was not trying to intimidate me. He was saying, Jerry, you need to go get a license, tag insurance. They're going to pull a Jerry Kane on you. Approximately 3.5, 4 years ago, there was a man with his son, and they were mowed down by about 25 or 30 police officers, and his name was Jerry Kane.
Yeah, I know. I've spoken to the guy once.
So, they have now moved from the verbal type stuff. They've actually moved into, actual threats. I mean, I've received phone calls on my home line here. I only have one line. And people calling up threatening to kill me. And same voice. So I've had an awful lot of people say, well, they've really stepped the pressure up, and you had a good run for 13 years. You need to get under the radar. Well, I'm not allowed to do that. I've taken a vow before the Father and His only begotten Son and all of heaven and earth to live and learn by the Father's laws. I notice that Kate many times uses scriptural words, scriptural thoughts. She's pointing out, it appears to me, that we need to get back under that jurisdiction. That is the jurisdiction I'm under. Any other jurisdiction that I've been able to find is corporate. And then you're basically chopped meat. You
right.
have no way to win in corporate law unless you're rich. In the United States judicial system, I don't care what state you're in, if you go to court against me and I got $1 million to spend on my attorney and you got $5,000 to spend, who do you think is going to win? It's that simple. And I used to be have quite high substance. I was actually in 1991 getting ready to start a $3 billion development. I took a vow of poverty the next year. It took me a number of years to get rid of everything, and so I became a poor man. And but that's how the system is here in the United States, and most likely, I have no experience in Australia or England or anything, but I'll bet you it's the same way there. If you're not rich, you're going to lose in the courtroom. Because if I've got even $100,000 for my attorney, and I'm fighting, say you got $5,000, my attorney's going to wallpaper your attorney in the first 2 weeks, and your $5,000 is going to be gone. Well, when you're up against the government, as the U.S. Supreme Court has said, the individual states spend millions and millions and even billions of dollars on their machine, and yet you have how much money to spend on your defense? It's time to wake up and realize that the corruption is absolute in the United States of America.
Okay. Now,
and I would probably suggest it's probably that way in virtually every other country in the world.
Right. Now, I came across Kate's documents around, I think it was October, and that's when I actually tried to talk to you about them. Tell the audience what happened in terms of how you felt and what happened with your cases, because I know that you had a little bit of a problem with taking them on board.
Well, this past Monday I had to have a pretrial in a circuit court, and then on Tuesday I had to have an arraignment in a county court. I'll start with the second one. In the county court, the judge asked me a question. Within 10 to 12 seconds of me answering the question, he told me that if I said one more word, that the bailiff, and he pointed to the bailiff, he said, "Bailiff, if he says one more word, arrest him and take him out." And I was not allowed to, he asked me to make a plea. I tried to make a special plea. He cut me off and said, if I say one more word, have me arrested. He entered a plea of not guilty, which I never would enter a plea of not guilty unless there was severe threats, duress, and coercion. And so he entered a plea for me, and he wouldn't allow me to speak.
Now, There was no prosecutor in that particular case, was there?
No.
Amazing.
Yes. Then going back to Monday, got started, with the circuit court, and within just a few minutes, the circuit court refused to allow me to speak. And this is pre-trial, where you're supposed to be able to go over various things, like you want a motion for this, that, and the other. Well, the state attorney never, or the state prosecutor, what do you want to call them, never ever opened their mouth, ever, at any time. And before I brought up any subject, the court said, you can't have this, and this. And I've ruled that way. That's it. So I wasn't not allowed to talk. Well, the people in England and America, you can study something called the Star Chamber. This is representative of the Star Chamber. When they take you in, summarily you're executed. And this is what's going on. Now, I intend to continue to fight this, but for the average, normal individual that has, a job, a wife, kids, got all kinds of things he's got to do, I just don't see how they're going to be able to come up with 40 or 60 hours a week, every week, to study and be able to get into these courtrooms. I just can't imagine that somebody is, that smart and going to be able to do it. If you are under their jurisdiction, the only thing I have seen for years is individuals just say, I'm guilty, but I want less of a fine, less jail time. No matter what, they plead guilty. And I actually watched a lady Monday that was not guilty plead guilty so that they would not slam her to death. And she's, in deathly fear of what, goes on in the courtrooms. So when the population loses the ability for recourse in a courtroom, you've now reached the total level of totalitarianism and anarchism. And the government is the one that's anarchist.
Right.
And that's the clear message that I'm trying to point out. They have dissolved all their rules, and they're just doing whatever in the world they want to do. And individuals better start looking for the proper refuge, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've talked with you on the phone before privately, and you have mentioned that this is what's going to come, and I have had a bit of a problem with that, as you know, because I'm always trying to find, well, these guys are meant to do this, that, and the other. They're meant to follow the rules, and now we're seeing that they're not doing that at all, and it's happening all over the world. People in England, people in Australia, actually wherever the English-styled justice system is, this is where it's happening. Canada as well, but primarily America, and as you know, America has been targeted because they have had the experiment of trying to be self-governed, and this has been attacked quite heavily by the European hierarchy. But going back to how you've fared. You have seen how things have changed over the last year, even. Is that
well? Yes, but one needs to also know that with regard to these subjects, haven't had any problems for 13 years. So really, on these subjects, I'm not familiar what they were doing to other people 2 or 3 years ago. So I don't know what they were doing 2 or 3 years ago to other folks.
Right.
So, I have no knowledge of that, but I'm pretty sure they were slam-dunking them, but I haven't witnessed it. And with respect to some of the ideas and things that Kate's talked about witnessing, yes, I have been studying that, and yes, I think it's a good idea, but I wasn't allowed at any time to bring anything up of any nature, of any substance. So, if you have, and I can't say that it would work or wouldn't work because I have no experience, but when you have no chance to even try something, it's pretty dim out there, the way I say.
Yes.
I mean, it's laughable almost. except that if you thought about it too much, you'd cry. And myself, I've had a position for over 25 years. I don't want to cry because I'm afraid I'll never stop. So I don't cry.
Right. Now, after your, when was it now? A few days ago, I gave you that statement that people have been using in court, and you haven't actually got around to using that yet because...
haven't had any way to do it.
Right.
I am hopeful in the next coming days to put it into court documents in a text form. And let's see what happens. Up until 2 or 3 months ago, I was pretty sure by everything I'd ever done in my life, what I witnessed in other cases with other attorneys and so forth, that hey, I can, they're going to maybe follow the rules and then get whipped. Well, now I'm looking for the kitchen sink.
Okay.
And if I throw the kitchen sink in, it doesn't land on their head. Well, I still threw it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, but it's the refuge that people need to decide where they want to go to. If they think there's refuge under a constitution, if they think there's refuge under citizenship, it ain't going to happen unless, and I'm going to try not to be crude here, unless you like a real dried out corn cob placed in your rear posterior orifice.
Okay.
And if you don't like that, then you need to find another refuge. The only refuge that I can find is the Father and the Christ and His jurisdiction, His laws. A lot of people have heard, well, I don't have to do any of that stuff. I won't do any of that stuff. Well, Kate, she takes and she points out in her letter on contracts, she points out at the get-go where the Christ says, you cannot serve two masters. You have to pick one. And this is what I think is the bottom line with Kate. Now, I could be wrong. I've never talked to Kate. But she's pointing this out, that you cannot contract willy-nilly. And we have been, through hundreds of years, believe we just contract. Well, those contracts have attachments. They have liability attachments.
Yes.
And then you find out that, guess what? You're not allowed to do any physical discipline to your child. Now, I didn't have little girls, but I had little boys. And I'll guarantee you at times a little boy needs a little swat in his butt. I'm not talking about bruising him or cutting him or beating him up or anything. I'm talking about, hey, we need to talk to you, son. You're not acting right. We need to get you attention. We have people that are being forced to buy insurance. And they're arguing. They're not arguing about being forced to buy insurance, but that they have to pay more. They can't go to this doctor. They can't have this hospital. They don't look at what the Christ said. He says, trust in the Lord. I have never been able to find where He says, trust on the Lord on sunshiny days, but on the rainy days, trust in Allstate. Mm-hmm. Never heard that. Never read that.
Okay.
We're not supposed to be trusting in a government. We're supposed to be trusting in the Creator. And when we, like me, all my life, my family, nobody in my family, to my knowledge, ever was sent to jail. Never were criminals, always on the right side of the law, always doing everything always right, always paying taxes. And then to get to approximately 36 years of age and start finding out that my good, well-meaning family was in error on various subjects. And so an awful lot of humble pie I had to eat. And as a consequence, what people have to do is determine, do I really know everything, or have I maybe learned some stuff wrong? Now, if you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and there's some major item that you believed in all your life, and all of a sudden somebody presents information to you that subject matter, that you were wrong on it for all these years. Well, you got to swallow a little bit of crow. You've got to humble yourself and reorganize your ego and go to the truth. Prior to 1989, I was called by people in Central Florida and around Florida as a strict conservative constitutionalist. Yeah, man, I believed in the Constitution of the United States. I was red, white, and blue. Now, I didn't believe back in the time when the Vietnam War, I didn't believe in that war, but I absolutely was, incensed when people tried to abuse our servicemen. And I said, no, I won't tolerate this. I will not, allow this in my presence. Actually wound up in a fight with about 50 guys on my side and about 600 on their side. And we won because, they were trying to abuse servicemen. I said, I don't care. I'm going to fight. And I fought, just hands and fists, knees and elbows, stuff like that. And we kicked the snot out of it. 600 people that wanted to spit on our servicemen. I did not believe in the war, but I don't believe in spitting on our servicemen. Well, the Constitution is a complete and total fraud. We wouldn't have time to go over all the things that I found, but it is a complete and total fraud. I would love to have some listener, if they want, call in and explain to me what the word Constitution means. Somebody that has never talked to me. What does the word Constitution mean? And see if we can have just a little, feedback back and forth with each other.
Okay. There seems to be a misinterpretation of what you're talking about the servicemen. Someone just mentioned, is it that you're talking about fighting the servicemen, or is it...
No, I do not believe that anybody should spit and abuse our servicemen that are returning from war. Now, they may have gone to war for a wrong war, and they may not have known what the reasons are and the whole 9 yards, but you don't spit on our men that were maybe deceived in what they're doing. I'm not in favor of any of these wars that have been going on. As a matter of fact, it's hard to find a period of time in the history of the United States where there's been 20 years when they haven't been at war. It's the most warlike country I've ever heard of in my life in studying history. Now, I'm not in favor of war, but I'm not in favor also of our servicemen being spit on, being abused, being not taken care of when they're promised that if they're injured, they would get what they would get, and now they don't get squat. Reclassifying our servicemen as being mentally unfit to own a gun because they were in the service, and, the service is pushing drugs down our servicemen's throats every day. As much as 5 and 6 different medications to make them up or down or, just unbelievable what they're doing to our guys. So I hope I've clarified myself on that a little bit.
Sure. And I just want to just go over again the reason for me bringing you on to the listeners out there, because there are some people who don't agree with me having Jerry on. Jerry is very knowledgeable in how the legal system worked up until very recently, and I would think of Jerry as being one of these very informed individuals who is going from the old way of doing things, which is how it has worked in the past, to the new way of doing things, which is very, very different to what Jerry has done before. And I just wanted to bring Jerry on to actually show the listeners how he's been faring with Kate's documents, and not really the difficulty, but the kind of I know that you've had a little bit of resistance, Jerry, in actually even taking on board some of these documents in the beginning, because it wasn't presented in a way that you were used to, in terms of it didn't look like a legal document, for example, one that had proper captions, headings, and stuff like that. And I know that once you mentioned where is it in any case that this stuff is there. So you're now coming to see the hidden side of what people are having to deal with, which is I've tried to explain. It's it's a hidden code that is never written down anywhere by the top head honchos who mentor their newbies in the system itself. It's all, I believe, it's all verbal, and I was trying to explain to you all this stuff, and it's only recently that you've just begun taking on board Kate's information, isn't it?
Yes, and part of the problem is the fact that I'm not able to acquire internet service without entering into a contract that would give me and create a real problem for my status. But I have to rely on individuals like Chris that send something to somebody else, they download it, put it on a flash drive, and then I bring it back. The majority of the materials that I have been able to receive, and this is not nothing negative on Chris's part or anything like that, but I've only had them for about 3 weeks.
Right.
So, it does make it a little bit, difficult to do something if, you don't have it.
Yes.
I actually received my first set of files that had some material from Kate where I could actually look at it, read it, on December. It was sent on December 19th, but I didn't get it until about December 22nd or 23rd.
Okay.
So, time I can get up to somebody else's house, they have time to do all this stuff and get it back to me, and so, I've tried to be diligent and read every bit of Kate's material. I can't tell you I've read it all twice. I normally read something 3 times, but there is a good flavor there, and she's speaking in terminology that is different than what I've learned. In all my life, if I went into a word, I needed to know exactly what that word meant. I had to have case law talking about that word. So there's a tremendous amount of work to be prepared to walk into one of these courtrooms. Well, I haven't seen anywhere where Kate's saying, let's walk into the courtrooms. She's saying, get rid of these contracts, which is what I've been after and been doing since 1992.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, there's also the concept of not admitting to the name that Kate brings up in these documents, and I know you've had a little bit of a problem with that. Could you explain a little bit about that area?
Well, the name is very important to understand what they're trying to do to you. What they're trying to do is to get you to admit you have a name without defining it, and then tie you back to a birth certificate and the bonds and all the certifications that are on that. By practice, since 1992, I have eliminated the birth certificate. By also formal paperwork, I have eliminated all contracts with any level of corporate government. However, I have never been able to take and put this stuff into a writing form.
Okay.
For example, when the courts send you something, they say name. Well, I'm explaining this out and saying that the word Jerry is words. And quite frankly, it's not my name because I do not have a valid birth certificate. As a matter of fact, it's impossible for a male to give birth. My creation date is approximately 9 months before I entered into the air of the world. So there's something in American or United States law, probably in all the other country, is the situs of creation. Wherever a corporation is created, maybe it's in New Jersey, well, that's where it was created, and that's where the bulk of all of its taxes has to go. And if it's not located anywhere else, doesn't have things, its taxes have to go there. Well, the situs of my creation is the Father in heaven. So all of my stuff has to go to Him. Well, when you try and explain this to these people, they get pretty dumb pretty quick. They close up, they lock up. So But I have actually today gotten into that subject with paperwork that'll hopefully go out in 2 days, maybe Monday, I guess it'll go out, and get on that track of getting away from the word name. And I think I've explained it in pretty good detail of what I worked on today. But yes, there is a real attachment if you come out and the judge says, "Is your name Jerry Kirk?" and you answer yes, you're in real trouble. Now, I don't do that and haven't done that in the past. That's just not what I do. But I have not had the emphasis of some of the areas that Kate has been using.
You're basically very, very new to the way Kate's coming across with the documents and how to use them, aren't you?
Yes, extremely new. But I've every single thing that you've sent me with respect to Kate, I've read.
Right.
And trying to dig into it. And I have another disadvantage. I cannot afford to call into conference calls and listen to these types of educational items on a regular basis. They charge me 16 cents a minute. Just can't handle that.
And that was a deliberate ploy to close you down, wasn't it?
Yes, because I had an all-in-one contract and all one-rate contract, and some months I run 3,000 to 5,000 minutes, and so after a year or two of that, they said no more conference calls. And so now, I just cannot participate in conference calls and, don't have the money.
Right.
So I can't do that. Now, today I've been, three-weight in, so, this isn't costing me 16 cents. I'm just not, I took a vow of poverty, and I certainly do not have anything, left over. It's week to week and time to time. And you get by. And I'm not complaining, but I just don't have wherewithal to, spend 16 cents a minute.
Right. So I want to open up, I'm going to ask people who want to ask questions to call up and put their hand up. There's no one at the moment who has done that, so there are many people, or actually a few of them actually on the board who on the Skype room who are kind of, I feel, have questions, but they're not asking them on the radio. So hopefully those people will hear this and call in and ask questions.
I'm here.
Oh, hello, Kate.
They couldn't handle it, man.
Yeah, I've been hearing that.
Again, I had to have the worst radio interview by the worst radio host ever, so there it was. Perfect, out of the way. Thank you. Yeah, it was fine. Well, I mean, unfortunately for Sean, he's caught in the mainstream media type of interviewing, and it's always about trying to make somebody wrong or to try to tunnel a specific question a certain way, pigeonholing an answer, and I don't fly that way.
No. And anyway,
and they don't like the word "fuck" on their shows.
Well, I've seen that you had a bit of a ding dong with the guys, so it's interesting that you were able to be there for that long.
Well, no, I'm actually more amazed than most because during the second break, I even told them on the air, if you don't want me here, I can go. I've got another show to get to. I don't give a shit. It's like I'm you want me there? That's fine. I'm here. You're asking for my time.
Mhm. Well, Kate, I've got Jerry, my friend Jerry. I've mentioned to you today on the call here.
Hey, Jerry, how are you?
Quite in shock, right? I've never ever heard you, and I was under the impression that Kate was female.
I'm transgender. I am transgendered. Lower voice than tits would indicate.
Okay. I'm kind of shocked by that. And apparently,
don't be, because Jesus
people
wasn't.
that you've been talking to do not know the history of For Under Consideration of the King, do they?
Well, they don't know a whole lot of things, and that's okay. And that's not passing judgment. I'm just making observations. See, that's the difference between people cannot hear me from that neutral position. They can only hear me from what they've been programmed with, the judging position. right? They'll judge that I've said something to offend their ego, which is not my intent at all. My intent is simply truth. My intent is simply to stay neutral, observer. What do I see? What is real? Beyond that, the rest is drama and illusion, you know? I'm a different duck, baby.
Okay.
I quack a whole lot differently than other ducks.
So I was going over with Jerry, for the listeners, going over how he's been able to take on board your information, Kate, and he's now...
How are you liking it, by the way?
Well, I've been taken aback by some of the things you've said here recently. Listening to you for the first time, and some of the things I'm not sure if you're teasing or if you're telling the truth. But for example, I have something that Chris was able to get to me, Contracts by Kate of Gaia.
That's me.
And when I get in there, I see where you're talking about how you cannot serve two masters. Period. And you get into
I just
things
follow what Jesus
that, quite frankly, appear that you're moving towards the Father's laws. Is that true or not? Is the Father's
I just listened to what you... Yeah. Well, again, I don't want to get into semantics regarding that, because that can be that's a very literal thing. But I'm with you on the concept. So let's walk the concept. I like the Bible. I look at that as I look at everything allegorically. Great teacher of that, by the way, is Bill Donahue on hiddenmeanings.com. You'll love this guy, and because he really breaks down what the Bible is saying allegorically. It's not a literal book. It was never meant to be taken literally. It says right in it numerous times. These are allegories. These are parables. You know, the parables of Jesus. A parable is a parallel story. Okay. And it's like the expression, shoot the bull, right? It means we're going to go talk, not to get a gun and go take some horned beast out, right? So that's what the Bible is. Everyone's taking it like literally, shoot the bull, quick, get a gun, shoot the cow, right? That's how it's being taught in religion. The last thing that churches and synagogues and mosques and all of these other religions teach, the last thing they teach is what's actually being said. They teach the literal. And you will. I think it was Paul. Might have been Peter. Said, you will die by the letter. If you take it literal, it will kill you. And I took that, and I was thinking, you know what? These guys are really trying to say something here, and it's up to me to have the eyes to see it and the ears to hear it. And that's all I'm doing. That's why it's so very difficult for me to go on shows with other hosts. And there's no harm to Sean. I know what I was dealing with there. I was just having fun. I was dealing with a program, dealing with an ego. That is a completely separate thing. And the minute someone says, well, it's not my ego, is the minute I know it is, because I know what my ego is, and I put it outside of me. You see, the religion teaches that God is outside of you, and it's not. Jesus said it pretty clear. The kingdom of heaven is within. Okay, I got that. All right, I'll work with that. And of course, the ego, the program, the literal, is meant to be outside of you. So it got us in the mirror, 180 degrees in the mirror. So I just take it from that perspective, and I was born into that perspective because I've been in a literal prison my whole life in this body. I know who I am. I know what I am. And don't be confused about, meat sticks. That's the game. That's the illusion. Just because something has a vagina and something has a penis doesn't make them lesser masculine or feminine on either side. That's the game. You're supposed to be magnetic, electric, feminine, electric, masculine. These are all conveyed very clearly in the Bible and every other book I've ever read. It's the same story, just told from different perspectives. So yeah, to actually agree with what you said, I'm just following what the teachers were actually saying. And I'm taking it exactly the way it was meant to be taken, from an allegory. Once I see the allegory, now it's a real thing to me, and I change the intent of it. It was an allegory that Jonah went into the whale for 3 days. That is the same as Jesus going into the tomb for 3 days. It's the same allegory, right? And of course, as soon as Jonah got spit out on the fourth day, and Jesus, arose on the fourth day, is the allegory of awakening or rebirth. It's not a literal thing, it's all allegorical. And more importantly, it goes beyond that. It goes into the anagogic realms, where you're dealing spiritually at that level. That's why people, again, I must drive people nuts. I really must, given where I come from in my perspective, because it is so far outside of the normal books. But people at this table, we only got, 30, 40, 50,000 people a night here, get it. That's why they're here. So I don't care about going on some other show. I'm just to get numbers. That's not about that. It's just about sharing this with others if they can handle it. And I said this many times. I think, Chris, you'll back me up. I am a nearly impossible interview for other radio hosts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just a small footnote. Jonah was on a ship named the Whale, and he was thrown into the hold for 3 days and 3 nights. He wasn't actually in the mouth of a whale. And most people fail to do various research on that.
Jerry, I get it. Stop with the literal, though. It's all allegory. When he was cast over the ship, or the hold, or whatever way you want to say the same thing, the allegory that has been explained is Jonah getting cast. He got thrown off the ship into the waters of truth. Water is truth, and he basically had to let go of everything. That's what it's. Bill Donahue, what's the name of the video? You'll love it. It's on the Jonah story. And Jonah still didn't learn his lesson at the end of it. It was perfect allegory.
Yeah, well, an awful lot of the stories in the Bible are about individuals that did not listen to what the Lord said.
See, you're literal. That's a literal translation.
To determine what is correct and what's not correct. What jurisdiction are you under offhand, Kate?
What I am under universal, natural, God law, if you will, for lack of a better word. I don't like using literal words because people still take the words like they're explained in a dictionary. I have my own dictionary. I have my own definitions of Phoenician, of phonics, of sound. I play it a different. See, people in the courts think they're dealing with Roman law. Well, Roman law is based in Phoenician. What is Phoenician? Phoenician's all about sound, phonics. All right. This is what it means to be the phoenix or the phonics rising from the ashes. Ash, letter H, in French, correlates with Ita, the seventh letter of the Greek alphabet, which is God. Then you can go to the Theta, which is the two opposing capital G's laid over each other to look like a circle with a line through the middle of it. I deal at an entirely different, and it's not because I'm special. It's just what I found, and I'm just sharing what I found. And I'm not saying I'm any better or less than anybody else. As a matter of fact, this table is the only one that I know of that's completely level, where we're all one here. I make a point of that. There's no stars, and we're all stars.
Well, yes, I understand the word, phonics, and understand it in that fashion. Does it make any difference to you that the Phoenicians were Canaanites, offspring of the devil?
Well, then you might understand why the courts are all about Phoenician law, then, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Can you? Okay, now, can you agree that in the beginning there was the Word?
Yes.
Right, so can I. But how did you, hang on. How did you spell it? I spelled it W-H-I-R-R-E-D. Spiral. Sacred geometry.
Okay.
The whole universe is built on sound.
Yes. Because I've studied some of the words back, and yes, when air passed across vocal cords, it created frequencies, and we're all frequency individuals. And through the course of my work, for example, pardon me?
No, keep going. I was going to say that throat is a torus or toroidal creation. That's your toroidal field. The Bible is all about astrotheology, if people really get the gist of what's going on there. It actually has human biology. It has everything in it once you know how to read it. It's the book, the Bible, the Torah, the Vedics, the Quran. All of these books are spiritual books that tell you all the answers to the universe allegorically, not literally. That's why there's divide and conquer, that Muslims want to kill Christians, want to kill Jews, want to kill whatever. That's what the literal teachings do. And you hit on a key thing there with regards to Phoenician law and the Canaanites, right? Well, Cain is the left brain, Abel is the right. Cain is the masculine left, Abel, and I prove this in Hebrew, Abel is a female. She's not a boy, okay? Abel is feminine, divine, creative right, the magnetic void with the left Cain, right? If you're unable, then you're walking with a Cain. It's all in the phonics, and when you see it, you start to see the real magic of what's happening here. And that can be twisted one of two ways. It's what is your intent? And if your intent is owned, then I don't care what you say, I own your soul. That's why I'm breaking this down, so that people don't have to be kept under this Phoenician, Canaanite, evil paradigm, trapping their souls. This is what Jesus came to teach, by the way. I'm just paying attention to the teachers, That's all.
Yes. Well, I try to do that too, and you've mentioned that we are electromagnetic, machines or entities or creations, whatever. And through investigating the Father's law, where he says that you have to wear like linen or cotton or wool and no other types, you can't mix things. Well, as opposed to like your rayons and polyesters and so forth. Well, if you actually take a needle and you rub it with like silk, you can place it on a dried leaf in a natural type of reservoir of water, no wind, no waves, and it will turn towards north. By the individual wearing all cotton or wool or linen, things, silk, and not mixing that, you realign your magnetic frequencies in the actual body. And those things, those types of details, I have found as being available. So, I look at things, and I try to explore them deeply, and figure out what I don't know, not what I know, because I already know that most of the stuff that I know has been corrupted. Okay, I'm trying to search for better knowledge, for true knowledge.
Well, you're right. Everything in the physical is corrupted, and it's up to us to switch it back to not being corrupted. But don't get polarized in it, because if we are polarized in good versus evil, then we're not seeing the whole picture. We're only choosing to judge half of it. When you judge something, it says, "Judge not, lest you be judged." So I said, I go with that. So if I gamble and say that they're evil because of flesh, but that's because that's what they're called, raised that way. They don't see it as evil; they see it as good. So it depends on your interpretation. It depends on your perspective. Where are you standing at it, and are you judging it? I only judge it from self's position of me. That's not something I would do. Is it something I would do or something I would not do? I can only judge self in my own choice. Looking outside of me, I will not judge. I will merely observe to see the reflections of that which I need to fix within me.
Uh-huh.
I
certainly do hope. I certainly hope that I am judged at Judgment Day, because the way I see things, everybody will be judged, and there are extremes where people say, "Judge not, lest you be judged." Well, it is a responsibility and duty in my life to make sure my life doesn't become polluted, that I'm not around drug addicts and meth users and all sorts of other abominations, because then that will affect my individual life and drag me down. So I judge when somebody is incorrect and will not change. I stay away from them so that I don't become infected. So judgment must be put into play, or else otherwise you sink to the cesspool. And
are you judging the individual? Hang on. Are you judging the individual, or are you judging the act? I mean, Jesus, he had no problem hanging out with prostitutes. He didn't judge them. He accepted all things, did he not? That's what Jesus was teaching. He was teaching accept all things. That's why I will not judge anything. I will not look at anyone as an abomination. I will not look at them. Yeah, if they're punching drugs into their arms, that's their choice. That's their free will choice. I'm not going to trespass on them. It's certainly not something. Hang on, not something I'm going to do. And if there's something I can do to show them a different way, then that's my responsibility to show them. Not to tell them, but to be what you want them to be. That's what Jesus was teaching. That's what all the masters were teaching.
Well, there is a point when if somebody won't get off drugs, won't get off the various negative things, where you say, hey, they will not listen, they will not change, and so I do not want them in the sphere of my life. So I separate from evil, if somebody is in fact evil. And, in the Old Testament, the Christ says, Jacob I love, and Edom, which was substituted for the word Esau, I hate. So apparently the Creator has some things that he doesn't like very good, so whatever those things are, I try to stay away from. If he says he don't like them, then that says to me I should not get around them things he don't like. Is that what you're trying to express?
No, all I'm trying to express is that I'm an observer, a neutral observer, from a neutral position. I accept all things. I mean, if there's anything I do literally is I look at what these teachers were trying to show us allegorically, literally, and I put those things into effect in my existence to watch my world outside change. Nothing changes outside of me until I change within me. The kingdom of heaven is within. Right? So I have to sort out my own demons of me's. That's what the demons are. They're not little horned things running around. That's what the church taught, right? So I don't speak churchianity. I used to, but I don't speak churchianity anymore. I'll tell you, the vast majority of, I can actually say, 100% of born-again Christians don't even understand what Jesus was trying to say. They just figure that, well, some guy died on a cross, an allegory. Whether he was real or not is irrelevant to me. His real name is Jehoshua, by the way. What he was trying to say was not to worship me, was to be me. And how dare anyone say, well, someone else died on a cross for me, so I'm good to go. No, you're not. No, you're not, because all that says...
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Yeah. I'm in agreement with you on that. Well,
right.
Look, I was told that...
Show me by your actions.
That you were coming back for the last hour, so, I don't want to, hog up y'all's program. It was just, Chris asked me to, fill in and share a little bit with folks. And
Jerry, I'm enjoying this. This is great. This is beautiful contrast.
Okay, there is actually someone that's called in. It's area code 509. I'll just...
That's Lynn. Crack her open.
That's Lynn. Okay. Does Lynn have any questions? Hello there, Lynn.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Wait. What's the joke about the two psychics meeting up? You're doing fucking fabulous. How am I doing? Ha ha ha. Oh, the F-bombs. They get you kicked off, huh? Damn it.
No,
anyway.
No, it wasn't that. Actually, we were still live. It's Sean, I got to tell you, man, I love the guy. I really do. And he needed me tonight. He needed to see a complete contrast of someone who's not just going to sit back and pretend to be an interviewee to the almighty God host. And I mean, I showed that early in the show because you know what? If you brought me on to talk, then why are you talking? My idea of bringing a guest on is to sit back and let them go.
Well, yeah, and
it's all good.
So he has a hard time listening. He likes to talk, but
yeah.
No,
it's all good.
Yeah, I've been hibernating because of it's winter.
That's all good.
Yeah, pondering and practicing, the self-love and stuff. But you mentioned that toroidal field, and I've been thinking about that and going, okay, so it's within us. So I'm imploding. I'm working on imploding in on myself till I reach the singularity, and then perhaps I will expand out again. I don't know. Just thoughts running through my brain. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Hey, how much time we got before we roll over here?
We've already gone over to just after 8.
Oh, really? I'm showing 51 minutes left on the air here.
Oh, yeah, 51 minutes.
Yeah, we're good.
Sorry. Yeah. So, Jerry, if you want to stay on, you're welcome to. If you need to go, then that's okay too. Yeah.
Well, I do need a 3-minute break, but I'd be happy to listen or, if asked, contribute.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
But, I do need a 3-minute break first.
Yeah, go ahead,
Jerry.
Go
do your thing, man. We got the table. It's all good. We got lots of people at the table. And actually, what I'd love to have is anyone that was tuned into the earlier show, I'd love to get your feedback on it and how much fun was that. But anyway, see what I mean? It's like, go ahead, try and piss me off. You can't. It's too much fun, right? Good promo, bad promo, I don't care. It's getting the word out, and that's all I care about. It's getting the truth out to people. You can beat me up all day long. I don't give a shit. Knock yourselves out. I mean, hell, it could be worse things could happen to you in life. You could be born transgendered or something stupid like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So guys, please call in, and you can call in at 661-467-2401, or call in via Skype. Get onto the Blog Talk page if you're not there, or you got to be listening somewhere, either on the main page. I'm not sure if we're on the main page, but just to refresh your page and call in through Skype, just like I did. I'm not hosting. Chris is hosting tonight. He's got the board. I'm on the board, but so feel free. We still got another 50 minutes plus another hour after that, and I really would love to hear some feedback from people that were actually tuned in to Revolution Radio, and get your thoughts, get your opinions, get your love on it.
When Jerry comes back on, there's a thank you from someone in the main room there, so I just want to pass that on to him.
Please do. This is about, we're here to build each other up, not nitpick each other down, and that's exactly what was occurring on that interview. And I won't get pigeonholed. See, because people didn't hear what was going on between where the music was going and there was chat the second time, because I called it out the first time. He actually opened the mics up, so and that got pretty testy. That was fun. Me. I'm not going to pull any punches.
I've got a message from Ninja. The phone and the BTR lines are not working. That's why we have so little on the board at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I was wondering why we only have 6. not very. I mean, I've never seen it that low before at all, and that's the reason the numbers are not working. Okay, Jerry, are you back yet?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay. Just want to pass on some thanks from one of the Skype room participants. He's, where is that comment gone? Okay, all right. It's from, thank you, Jerry Kirk, for your contribution, also most interesting, and I applaud you for standing up, mate. Cheerings to you.
Well, that was nice of that individual.
Yeah, and I want to actually reiterate again. I've known Jerry since 2010, and I was meant to meet him. And before I met Kate, he was the primary individual that I went to talk about law and talk about legal, lawful. And oh, by the way, there is a question about: do you understand about legal versus lawful, Jerry?
Yes.
Can you explain your understanding from your perspective?
Legal is corporate. Lawful is the Father's law.
Okay.
That's as simple as I can make it.
Okay.
Legal is full of legalisms, traps,
Jerry, just
pitfalls, all
Jerry,
that kind of good stuff like that. The Father's law is actually quite simple. Not that I understand all of it, but it can be broken down, and in that you know where you stand. If you do what you're told, then you don't get penalized. In the legal world, you have no knowledge of what is legal. There are, literally millions upon millions upon millions of words in legalism law. And every individual that has now become a person is easily found guilty of any number of felonies and misdemeanors. There's not a single individual walking around that has become a person that cannot be convicted on any number of legal crimes, whether you did them or not. It's a stacked deck entirely. And that's why in early 92, I began walking out of that system and, took a vow of allegiance, which in the courtroom terms, the legal terms, is called...
Chris, guys,
yes?
hey, jump it in. I'll be right back, Chris.
Okay. All right. Oh, okay. Something's, okay. Kate she had to go away for a few minutes here. So, yeah, just carry on talking.
Well, anyway, there's a big different world, and as I had said before Kate got on, the United States justice system, and I make the assumption all corporate systems are like this, the guy with the most money wins.
Okay.
And, I've actually been in that position a couple times, 25, 30 years ago, where, I had to spend $5,000, the other guy only had $500, and he had to quit once his $500 was gone. I didn't like that, but that's the way the system worked.
Right.
And quite frankly, in the United States, there's a lot of people that don't like the Internal Revenue Service. They just think it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that all depends on where you sit. If you've got a bunch of money, the IRS treats those individuals that study their code very, very well. And for many years, I had people that were making like $50,000 a year, and they said, man, we're paying like 32, 33%. And they said, well, Jerry, you make a lot more than we do. How much do you pay? I said, well, about 12%. They said, well, that's not fair. I said, well, why don't you go hire somebody that's actually tax attorney and a CPA and pay them something instead of going to H&R Block where they just rip you off. Why don't you learn the system? And that was when I was in the system. And the system is just wonderful if you're rich. But the system is designed, the entire system is designed to crush, chew up, digest regular people. That's what the system is about.
Yeah.
There's nothing at all about that doesn't fit that definition.
Right.
And people need to understand that, because as we were just before Kate got on, I was wanting to see if somebody would tell me what the word Constitution means. Well, we didn't get there to have somebody ask that. Well, the word everybody that I ever talked to, including me prior to many years, I always said it's this document. It's the basis of law. But I was not defining the word Constitution. The word Constitution has an I-O end at the end of it. That necessitates, to break that word down, it's an action or process. You then go to the front of the word, and it's C-O-N. So that means you've got pro and con. So it means opposition. So far we got the process of opposition. Then you have to look at the S-T-I-T-U-T-I. That's situate, which means that the word actually means the action or process of opposing the status quo. Now, that's what the word Constitution means. Well, I'm not one of these guys that said that, that believes in that we should alter the status quo, because the status quo had certain values, and those values, after 250 years, are gone. You can't even communicate with people about those values without them becoming upset and saying, well, you want to have a gun. Yeah, where I happen to be a temporal inhabitant, where I sojourn, this community is totally known that we don't have any violent crime in where the homes are. It's completely understood that if an individual or person, whatnot, is caught in your house they will get shot, and somebody will stick a knife in their hands if they need to. And so there's quite a peaceful environment that I happen to, be in, because guns prevent criminals from doing something.
Mm-hmm.
But a gun's in the wrong hand, we now have terrorists that call themselves officials or officers or
right.
some kind of term like that.
Right.
So each thing that was of value at one time in this country has been so diluted that you can hardly ever come to a consensus of people saying, well, that value we used to have, but we don't have it now. Well, we've introduced what the U.S. Supreme Court calls a populist attitude and a populist population, which means anything goes.
Wow.
And I just cannot live with anything goes. If a man puts his hand on a woman in a violent fashion, slaps her, hits her, something like that, that just doesn't fly with me at all. Zero. That just doesn't get it. You just don't hit women. You do not practice pedophilia. You don't. There's lots of things, but yet in our society today, all of these things, including the worship of Satan, are now acceptable. I cannot go with a system that is that full of abominations.
Sure.
I must oppose that as a matter of conscience.
Okay.
So, people have to take a look at history. They have to decide what their values are. For example, I've had people say to me, golly, you cuss a lot, Jerry. You use curse words. And I used to agree to that. But then I found out that what the true meaning of cursing is in the Father's law. Well, I've only done that twice in my life. And I've said the word shit and fuck and all these other kind of words. I've said all that during my life, and I still say it. But I have actually only cursed by the definition of the Christ twice in my life. And yet, if you try to open a book like the Bible, and you sit down with most folks, no, they go right back to their preacher, of which it tells us in the Old Testament, my vineyard, this is the Lord speaking, my vineyard is destroyed because of many preachers. And I'm not involved with anything called the word religion by the definitions in the corporate society. Definitions of words are important. If somebody doesn't know what a word means, it is and yet one person does know, or one individual does know, it's impossible to communicate. Without proper communication, we can never get on the same page. Somebody that might be my brother or might be my sister, we're going to argue because we haven't sat down and figured out what a word means. I think it means this. They think it means that. If that's occurring in my life, I know that I can't communicate with that individual. I have to stop and say, okay, what does that word mean? I mean, what is the meaning that you use and attach to that word? And we get trapped because we don't know that a defendant in a court case, by allowing that term to be associated with you, that means that you have accepted that you're under the jurisdiction they brought you in for. You don't know what a defendant is. And now you've just walked in and said, yeah, I'll be a defendant. Hey, you want me to be a defendant? I'll be a defendant. Yet you don't know what he means it means. So communications are vital. And hopefully through various radio shows like this, individuals will get down to certain points. I'd like to offer one word, like the word worship. I hear people all the time, worship God, worship God. And I ask them, what does the word worship mean? And I hear all these various things. Well, the definition that I've been able to ascertain, that worship means to obey and follow the rules. That's how you actually worship somebody. And, you don't worship somebody by being anarchistic to their rules and procedures. you can't worship them unless you're in obedience to them.
Sure.
That's a new thought for some people, maybe.
I've been telling people that do not go to court anymore because it's a crapshoot, and people that have been using Kate's documents have basically dropped them off into their case, or if they don't get accepted, you just leave them there, and that's what I recommend to everyone now, because there's no remedy anymore. There's nothing that you can do in the system. You have to just let it be.
And I have been professing for years that this time will come, and I'm right in the middle of discovering if the sum total of whatever I've been able to learn, plus with help with individuals like, Chris has sent me numerous things on many subjects and worked many, many hours to get me information. And there's other people that have helped. Well, I've been called many, many times in my life crazy, but I don't recall anybody ever saying that I'm stupid to my face other than me. I call myself stupid probably 2-3 times a day on a good day because I do something that I shouldn't have done or whatever. I just didn't think about something well enough and then got myself in a pickle. But I am crazy enough to see this through. And I will continue, and until and I'm not trying to be egotistical. I certainly am not trying to do this. I'm not trying to have false pride or anything else like that. But if there's a lay individual, not schooled and practiced in the bar, which I never went to law school except in utero, if somebody like me fails, this should be and this is basically all I've done for the last 25 years to study law, and gets his butt whipped. Well, I certainly wouldn't expect somebody that hasn't been doing this for a long time to get out there and try and beat them in their courtrooms. And so that's part of what my message is changing in the last number of months, because it's a kangaroo court situation. It's the Star Chamber is what's going on. So, and I do not fault, and I watched a lady plead guilty, pay the fine, do all this type of stuff this past Monday. I was able to catch up with her Saturday and visit with her, and absolutely, she didn't commit any kind of crime, but she is terrorized by the system. And I can't fault her to not trying to stand up and fight. I mean, she hired an attorney to get her everything down, and she spent $3,000 on him. Another $1,050 in court fines and other costs and everything, and she scratched that up as opposed to not be in there any longer because she had no chance. She knew her attorney was going to sell her out, and she only wanted that attorney to work the penalties down, So I certainly don't fault anybody for saying, and say, hey, y'all, everybody's got to go into court right now. Everybody go into court, learn how to do it. I wouldn't tell people that. Haven't really ever told anybody that. But I do think that people need to study and increase their knowledge in every area.
Okay. Well, people, unfortunately, don't have the time. It's getting to the point where one's attention units are taken up with everything but doing what needs to be done.
And I totally understand that. I have been an individual that for decades now, I have been blessed with time. If I decide I need to work on something that is, off the wall or whatever I need to do, study, and I need 7 or 10 days, I'm able to take it. And, I've been blessed to be in that position. But very few people are in that position. They got wife, they got children, they got a job, they got bills, they got everything else, and they don't have 40 or 50 hours a week if they want to. Even if they wanted to put the 40 or 50, they haven't got it. They just haven't got it because they're kind of trapped on, it's like the gerbil on the spinning wheel, the mouse on the spinning wheel. They're trapped on that. And, so they're looking for another way of relief. And I just say hang on until a particular point, and then I think Katie will bar the door. not meaning Kate, but I think it's going to get very vicious, and only a few people will have the guts to stand up and say, no, I'm not part of this. If you like it, go jump in. If you don't like it, get out.
Okay.
And if you can find a method that seems to work and it holds up, and then that's great. I have found over the years, and I've been listening to these Patriot militia groups since '86. I am not one of the Patriot militia, but I've heard ideas, and people say it works. A year, 2 years later, they're in Dutch. They're in bad shape. I actually know people that have done various things, they said, with the IRS, and yeah, it worked. It worked. And then 2 years later, the IRS came back and grabbed them and snatched them and beat the snot out of them. So every method has to be tested to make sure that it does work, and methods need a little bit of time to see if they do work. So, caution is the better part of valor in many instances.
Right. Well,
it's a shame to have to say that.
Yeah.
It is a shame to have to say that.
Well, I've got a few comments here that I want to pass on. A lady called Ninja, she said that I don't know if I've actually told you this, but there has been new information about stating that you're the witness in any situation where you're asked for your name, and I think I did actually mention this to you. And people have been being in court and then getting out by the judge saying we can't do business here or whatever, and so there are people getting some sort of victory, if you call it that, all over the world, in Australia, in Canada, in England, and I think in the US as well, although I'm not sure.
Well, I'm very happy about that. I will just mention to you that I was totally prepared both Monday and Tuesday to go into the subject matter that you were talking about, but I really don't remember any occasion where I was allowed to speak more than 30 seconds, and then I was summarily cut off. And, it's not like the corporate Mammon Babylonian government didn't know I was coming. And it's not like they don't know me. So, they're playing by, a little more harder rules. And, so, I'm not complaining as such. I'm just stating the facts of what's going on. And, if I'm to win, it'll be because it's the Father's will. If I'm to lose, it's because of His will. But, whatever somebody, when any individual determines and has searched and knows their subject and they're positive of their subject, you can't quit just because it gets difficult. You have to, there will have to be, if you will, bloodshed. And it'll take a number of individuals having their blood shed before, and that'll wake up more people. For every one that goes down, probably 100 will wake up. I don't know what the number is, but, never underestimate the effect that the individual can do. But
yes,
they have to do something. If they are just complaining, if they're just, parroting, they're not actually doing anything. They have to pick some subject and go to work on it and get good at that subject. Right.
Well, you mentioned something quite important, which is the individual has the ability to do a lot of good, And Maggie in Montana, she has been phenomenal in just running with this documentation that Kate has provided. She was in a very, very bad space when I met her, and not knowing, she'd been fighting her foreclosure for like 3 years, and she's very very much in touch with what she can, what she says is her God, and very much like you on that level. And she actually said to me that she had prayed on an answer, and then I call up. Actually, it was a mutual friend of ours that told me to call her. So she prayed first about the whole, her whole situation, and then I end up calling up and saying, "Are you willing to go down this road?" And she said yes, because she had known beforehand that whatever was provided would be the thing for her to go with. So it was still difficult though, because there was that uncertainty of moving out of the old way of doing things and doing the new stuff, and it took perseverance, and in the end, magic happened. Really, it really did. She's now stopped, I think, on the last count, 9 definite foreclosures, 1 or 2 got sneakily through. And here's the thing that's happening even in that situation. There was one instance where they were inside the area where the house or the houses were being auctioned, and they asked, is the auction over? Is there any more, or are there any more sales happening? And the auctioneer said, no, it's all finished. So they believed him, and so they left. And what happens is the auctioneer goes ahead and does the sale. So this is the level that is happening. We are creating big effects through individuals using the knowledge that we have gained, and it's got to the point where we're now forcing people to lie. The other side is not liking what they're seeing, so they're now literally lying against all that they have sworn an oath to. So it's now kind of a open season. So it's like who can outwit the other the most, sort of thing. And we just have to persevere and
struggle to persevere. Yes.
Yes.
And one little item too that I recall from John Paul Jones, one of the famous admirals, was if you do not have anything at risk, you cannot win. So we have to risk something. This individual has put every single item that now belongs to the Father and His only begotten Son, the Christ, everything is up because I'm not going to have this land that belongs to the Father be taxed. Not going to do it. Now, they may kill me, they may SWAT team me, they may do any of these other things, but I'm not going to back up. I am all in my fights. I have no reserve. I have nowhere else to go. The only 2 family members that sat down and studied, being my dad and my grandma Whalen, those 2 individuals sat down and studied. And after the course of a few years, they said, my gosh, what you're saying is correct. But all of the rest of my family abandoned me. And some of them abandoned me because I no longer was going to be making all this big giant money and, all this stuff, and they wouldn't be able to mooch off me in the future. And that's kind of a harsh way to talk, but it's the reality. So I have really no family anymore because of, and the amount of friends that I had before I started on this path were, quite a bit. And, when I walked out of the system, the Rolodex shrank by 95%. So, people have to pay a price if you really want to be, in the proper term, free to worship the proper entity. You as Kate has said, I repeated it at the beginning, or said at the beginning, you cannot serve 2 masters. So you have to make a decision. Who do you want to serve? This individual, Jerry Kirk, has chosen and vowed to serve the Father, the Son, and the Father's laws. And, would like to run into other individuals that want to get under that jurisdiction. And that's what I always am looking for, individuals that want to go under that jurisdiction, because I can't find anything else that works. And if anybody else knows of a different jurisdiction that works, I'd sure like to hear about it.
Well, so I think it's also the intent behind that thought of which master to serve, in terms of each one of us has a different way in language or in our own thoughts of putting what you've just said. Other people use different words, but when you look at the intent behind what the individual is doing, then it's the same as what you've just said. It's just that they use different words which they are more comfortable with.
Certainly. And I actually have the majority of individuals that I know are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And of the ones that I know that I'm speaking of, they have nothing except Social Security. Nothing. Now, they're aware of the number of the base. They're aware of this computer keeping track of you, this control factor. They want to get rid of the number, but they have no way to get food, shelter, anything. And so I am sympathetic with that, and I've said, hey, you have no other choice as to what you're doing. However, when it comes time that you go cash your Social Security check, and you got a $20 bill in your hand, and you go down to the gas station and they say, we won't take your 20 unless you got your government ID. Well, that's the day it's all over. That's the day that, I'm willing to eat off the ground, eat the grass, the everything, whatever I need to do. That's the bottom line. And when it gets to the bottom line, the people that are not willing to make the sacrifice, I feel sorry for them.
Okay.
Because we've clearly been warned that we must not take the number or the mark or the name of the beast. And everybody that I know has a Social Security number, well, the exception of one or two people, has a Social Security number, and they have a zip code. Those two numbers consist of the number of the beast relative to my research. Because those two numbers, they have been compiling in the United States, they have been compiling every type of data using those two numbers. If you had a hemorrhoid operation 2 years ago, they know about it. If you buy Preparation H on a regular basis, it's actually on your individual master file with the IRS. I mean, your political affiliations, just anything you name is codified by those two numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't have those numbers, but as a consequence, that's one of the reasons I cannot have internet. It's one of the reasons that I don't have a checking account, savings account, credit card, anything of that nature. And it makes life very different,
right,
to say the least.
Right.
Very different.
Well, I've got here someone through Facebook who's actually put their hand up, so let's open up that mic and see who it is. Hello? Your mic is open, whoever's through Facebook. Anyone? Nope. Okay, well, your mic is open if you want to ask a question.
Well, one of the things that happens to people also is when they do hear different words, and if those words are contrary to what they've heard, they go through something like a little mental lockup. And various people have done studies on this, and they find out that most people need to hear the same subject at least 3 times to even consider that subject. I find myself that if I'm reading something, I actually want to read it 3 times so that I can get a full understanding of it. So, when individuals hear these new terms, they have to fight the mental lockup, be it a term that you say or that Kate says or I say or anybody else say. Don't automatically dismiss it. Do your own research.
Yeah.
When people send me materials, I take and I read it, and I go, hey, that sounds pretty good. Well, then I want to go check it out and find out if that material is indeed valid. And in the past 2.5 decades, I can't tell you how many things that when I did research, they were just they weren't telling the truth, the people that were speaking. So you have to be responsible. The individual has to be responsible to themselves. They cannot just take what any individual says, that's walking around on this planet, as gospel. They have to double check, and check. It just has to be done. And then when they've done their own research to verify, the credibility, then they can stand on much more positive ground.
Right.
So, I want to thank you for allowing me to come on and fill in for a little bit. I thought Kate would have been back by now.
Well, the problem is tonight, for some reason, with the way this is set up, this radio station or this show, people can either call in or they can actually use Skype, which is a chat program on a computer. They can Skype in, and both those have not worked tonight. And Kate actually has mentioned that she tried to get back on, but she couldn't. So that's the reason why we've gone over for longer than I thought we would, because there's been a problem tonight, which kind of interesting. That.
Yeah. Just as another point that I'm aware of in my particular life, it was verified in 1987 when I was in Central Florida that my phones were being tapped by NSA grade equipment, and my stuff has been being tapped for many, many years, and people just need to understand that all this, don't get all wookie about the fact that they're tapping all of us. They shouldn't be doing it. It's, totally wrong. But they're going to mess with your equipment. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. They're going to do anything they can. And when they start messing, when they do stuff like that, what they're doing is they're demonstrating their fear.
Oh yeah, and that's what's been happening in these situations where people have gone to court, used Kate's documents, and had extraordinary results, or interactions like you've experienced, is the outright fear of these guys and their knowledge that they are now. It's just a question of time before they lose control of everything. And that scares the hell out of them,
Yes, and that's exactly what it says in the Word of God, that, the good people will be put into like a trance. They'll be delusional about what's going on, but eventually they will wake up, and then, Katie hits the door. It's going to be real mean and nasty, and individuals need to get where they need to be. They need to get prepped. They need to have a garden. They need to do all kinds of things that they may not expect is going to happen in their lives. And I know people that say, I've lived in this one town all my life. I say, well, what's your town like? Well, it's terrible. Then why are you complaining? Why don't you move to somewhere where it's a nice rural mountainous area where you've got a chance to live off the land? Either you got to be in the system and do what they say, and they're basically taking all of the, what you might call average Americans, or income-wise, from 50,000 down, and they're basically turning them into Soylent Green.
Yeah.
That's basically what's going on right now.
Right.
And, that may be crude terms, but that's what they're eating individuals. And I go down to court and I watch, when I'm not doing something, and I watch these individuals that don't have a job. They have no way to be in compliance with all these corporate rules. They can't come up with the money for insurance because they don't have it. Yet they're caught without insurance. So they give them a big fine. Well, now they have to pay this big fine because they didn't have insurance, but the fine's 3 times as much as the insurance.
Sure.
They can't pay the fine, so now they go to jail. Now the next time they go to court, their license is suspended. Now they get a second charge, and then they get another charge, and another charge. And, they're at the bottom of the barrel, and the man's thinking, I got a wife, I got 2 kids, 3 kids, whatever I got, and I need some food. I can't get a job because of all this stuff that's on my record. So they have nowhere to go except to turn to true crime, being drugs, burglary, whatever. And they have to have food. And they're living in mold-infested travel trailers and mobile homes. I mean, they just live at the bottom. And everybody doesn't pay attention to them.
Yep.
And everybody says, well, tough toenails for them. Well, what if you or I were down at that bottom? Would you want everybody else saying tough toenails about, the guys on the bottom if you were in the bottom? And when a country has the unemployment rate that this country has, by the way, in my county where I'm in Arkansas, the official count is 27% unemployed. It's more likely 55%. They have admitted in the newspaper that 67% of the people in this county are on some form of welfare. So, kind of at the very bottom where I am, Arkansas is the second poorest state in the nation. Mississippi's first. And the county I live in is the second poorest in this state. So, kind of at the bottom, and when you're at the bottom, you can then see what the poor people go through. Then you can appreciate it. When you're rich, you cannot appreciate what the bottom has to endure. It's that plain, it's that simple. Even if you're making $50,000 a year, you cannot experience what those at the bottom are living like.
Right.
And that I learned through my own experience of purposely getting rid of all materialistic type of wealth. And I don't have any. And so I get to experience the bottom as opposed to being up at the top and have my own airplane and all that kind of good shit. Don't have any of that stuff. Don't have, condos and ski trips and, offshore fishing and all that kind of stuff that I had. But I chose, as the Christ said, he said it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than a rich man to go to heaven. He also said, when a rich young man came to him, and the rich young man said, I give alms to the poor and all these laudable, charitable things, and the rich young man asked the Christ, what else do I have to do to enter into the kingdom? And the Christ said, get rid of all your businesses, pick up your cross, and follow me. So I'm very blessed to have learned those two verses back in late 91 and did that. And now I at least got a chance. Doesn't mean I'm going to get there, but it does mean I got a chance because I'm not a rich guy. So if any of the audience is bemoaning the fact that, hey, you don't have a brand new car and you don't have a, fancy boat and all that kind of stuff, no, the Lord maybe is taking care of you because you're not a rich man,
Yeah. Well, Jerry, we have about 10 minutes left. I'm not going to go for the next hour, but we have another caller, MF Stoneman. Your mic is open if you want to jump in here. Hello?
Hello, Chris.
Hello there. It's Mark, isn't it?
I was the only one who managed to get in tonight.
I think so, yeah. We've got two other mics open, and I think it was Lynn that mentioned a few things earlier, but there's the Facebook one, which is open, but no one, well, maybe not able to get through. So do you have any questions, Mark?
I just think it was quite interesting with the two contrasts, which Kate's evening tonight.
Right.
Did you listen, Chris?
I didn't have a chance to. I was knocked out for the whole day. I mean, after I went to see Kate to drop the car off, and then when I got back, I just zonked out and went to sleep. It's been quite tiring for me. I've been not able to sleep much at all these last few 7 or 8 days. 3 or 4 hours of rest a night, and that was it. So I take the sleep whenever I can now.
Knackered, Chris.
Yeah. So have you got any questions for Jerry or any thoughts?
Not really.
Okay.
Honest.
Okay. Right. Well, that's good.
Well, anyway, I'm not very controversial, apparently.
Well, okay, I won't say anything. Right.
And just if anybody happens to be interested, there is a website that has put up some of my materials, and should they have an interest, they could go to freedom-school.com and go to the link Jerry Kirk, and I pretty much guarantee that, there'll be at least 2 or 3 things that'll kind of tick you off. But, I stand by those items, and, they're there, they're for free, and some of the materials that are there is like a Samuel Johnson dictionary, 1756. And Chris is the one that, ran all that down and made it available at that website. And I was told that if you wanted to have one of those dictionaries, it cost you about $30,000 to have one in your hand. So, there's something there, and if you actually go look at a 1756 English dictionary and you read up a definition of certain words, and then you go into a modern dictionary, you'll maybe find out that they've changed the meaning of the words. Mm-hmm. And as long as they mess with your communication, where you think the word, whatever word, means something, and I think that word means something else, then you and I, being whoever it is, we're going to have a hard time communicating. So research is one of the ways that you learn, and, I would encourage all the listeners to this radio show to do lots of research so that you know where you want to stand.
Yeah.
But anyway, Chris, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to come on, and, I'll let you finish up whatever y'all going to do here tonight.
Okay, then. Well, thank you very much, Jerry, for your time, and thank you again. Yeah.
All right. We all have a great evening, and may the Lord bless all of you that are His. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Mark, I've got a message from Kate. He said, sorry, must be careful about that. Kate says, would love to hear your thoughts on my night. I suppose that you've been listening to Kate's other shows. Kate would like to know have your feedback on them.
It was just quite interesting, the contrast between the two interviews, the energy between the two.
Okay. I've seen. Second?
Yeah, go for it, Chris. Go for it.
No, I was seeing the comments, and so I gathered it was kind of quite interesting to kind of listen in on these, especially the last one. So if there's an archive at some point, I wouldn't mind listening to it.
The guy on the second interview was switched off from the get-go, whereas the guy from the No Borders Radio, I mean, it was, he was, dare I say it, open-minded.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't
know. The guy in the second interview, would the word belligerent be the correct word?
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know the type, yeah. He was attacking Kate probably all the time. Or being very egotistical. Well,
yeah.
There is an awful lot of shit that one goes through when you start down this path, And I just want to reiterate the reason why I brought Jerry on. He's someone that I really respect, and he actually has got me to the point where I was able to start thinking with alternative ways of looking at how one goes about doing things in life. For instance, I mentioned this last week actually, I had never changed or crossed out things on a government form, and with his help I was able to kind of pluck up the courage and actually do that. And it's something that many may feel is inconsequential, but for me it was a huge step. I mean, after I crossed out all these words on this form and put my words in there, I felt really amazing, absolutely amazing. And that was the first instance where I began to break the spells that the system so-called had over me. So, I've now become the mentor to Jerry. So he's in a transitional period, and there's a lot more work that I'll be doing with him because I think he's worth it. He has a tremendous amount of wisdom to bring to the table, but he's not yet at the point where Kate is with the understanding of the allegories and all that. He's still in, as Kate says, in the literal, and this is the what I and many people are probably having to deal with, is to bring those people out of that literal world and bring them into the allegorical world. And I'm straddling the two worlds, even though I'm not up to speed on the allegorical as much as Kate is, but I'm catching on quick.
I don't think you need to be, Chris. I don't think you need to be. I think you, the light bulb. Do you need to go? Kate is exceptional at phonics.
90 seconds.
Okay. Yes,
no?
And that is yes. That is true.
It's a feeling like if one of us punches a hole in the dam. Well, that's all it takes, isn't it?
Yes.
One. But the thing is, Chris, is getting people out of the program.
That's right, and that's the thing.
Some are going to fight it.
Yeah.
Tooth and nail.
Yeah. And that's what Jerry has done. He's fought it tooth and nail, and then, he began to see that I've been brought into his life for a reason, and he looked at that, and then he began to look at these documents in a different light. Anyway, we have 45 seconds approximately, so I'm going to be winding up for the evening.
We should all put good intentions out to Kate.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Don't you?
Intention is senior. Okay, so I'm going to just do the CMR promo, and good night to everyone, and thank you for listening. Okay, and thank you, Kate, for allowing me to have this evening.
Can I just say,
you're listening to Kate of Gaia on Critical Mass Radio. The game is up. Now it's our turn.
Okay.
Aloha, Mike.
Okay, that's it then. So I'm gonna say good night to you guys. We've rolled over. So you were going to mention something, Mark?
Aloha, Mike.
Okay.
we know,
all right,
we know
well,
Mike's
thanks.
listening.
Okay, aloha. All right. Okay, well, we've just rolled over, so I'm not sure who's on. I've only got 6 people here on the board here. And Kate says, thanks, Mark. Okay.
No problemo.
So I'm going to be... Okay, then. So I'll catch you on another night, then. And thank you, everyone, for calling in and going through the hassle of getting here.
Well done, Chris.
Okay. All right, well, you're welcome. Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks. Let's see now. Okay.
If you will, a knockdown drag-out, but what the court in Orlando didn't know, that I had already had an attorney sitting at that moment with the Attorney General of the state of Florida, the Governor of the state of Florida, and other, officials.
Okay.
And letting them know that, guess what? All municipal police cases for over 20 years, I got a little date wrong there, for over 20 years are now out the window. People can get new trials if they want to play with me. So anyway, I had the Orlando City Police came to an agreement that they could only take people into custody. They could not arrest them and book them.
Okay.
So, that's, I didn't want to do this statewide and allow a bunch of actual criminals that rob banks, drugs, kidnapping, murder. I didn't want them to get out, get new trials. So, there has been a level of intensity. I had learned how to convene grand juries, did that twice, and never went to law school, and I'm certainly not a state attorney. Learned how to shut down the jails in Orlando at the Orange County Jail. Through that particular process, within 2 weeks of turning in documentation, the Orange County Commission voted an emergency $30 million bond issue to redo the jail. So, been in an eminent domain case where the attorneys thought that the most that they would get, because they were being paid by the state in Florida, they have to pay your attorneys down there. They thought the most they'd get is $50,000 to $75,000. I told them 3.5 years before the, rendering of their fees that they would get $500,000. They did get $500,000.
Okay.
So I've been involved in lots of different types of things, And mainly the reason I get involved in things is because I see something that's not right. And I'm one of these guys that, quite frankly, has been called crazy many, many times. And, if something's not right and it's in my backyard, I'm going to go do what I can. And so that's how my life has, evolved, if you will.
Okay. And going back to that case, the courtroom where you're in.
Well, in 1987, which is, got to back up just a little bit, started doing some research on a subject in the state of Florida. And at that time, I was a citizen of the United States and a resident of Florida. I am not that way now, but I was then. I started doing some research on a particular case, trying to help some people. And there were 4 lawyers, 2 research people, a retired judge, and me in the room, and they would just bring me books as fast as they could. I seemed to have an ability to scan and read stuff fast. Okay. And one of the lawyers said, "We don't need to look this up." And I said, "No, the way my dad taught me, we always go back to the very beginning to find the answer." Well, by doing that, we discovered that in 1971, the Florida legislature, as abundance of wisdom, that they deleted the entire chapter in the Florida laws called municipal police power. They vacated every one of you. They said goodbye.
Okay.
No more, city cops. The entire chapter disappeared. So I did some research and continued, and so I wanted to go after the handicap parking. As my dad was paralyzed from the waist down, as my mom died from polio, as I have had polio 3 times and suffer from post-polio syndrome, I just don't believe in having a handicap parking space right at the front of a Walmart. People, get in there 100 feet, then they walk around for 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
So, it doesn't really make sense to me. So it was just a way to get them. So I found a situation where there were 4 cops in cars and 8 bicycle cops. So I thought that was a good time to park right in the handicap spot.
Okay.
So the day before I went to court, I filled out a notorious declaration declaring my allegiance to the Father, His only begotten Son, and the Father's laws. It was made because she's making it sort of easy for the average guy to understand it.
Okay.
I started at 5 years of age being taken by my dad, who was a member of the Bar Association. My mom was also an attorney, but she died when I was 3. But I started being taken to court by the time I was 5 years old. I certainly will not suggest to you at that age and for the years that followed after that I really knew what was going on, but I could see things, actions, movements, things of that nature, the way that the decorum of a court would proceed. Well, through the ensuing years after that, at about 12, that no longer occurred 4 times a year. It would only occur maybe once or twice a year. But then from the time of moving into, a little more older and teenagers, and as a teenager, and then moving forward with my life, I've been into a number of courtroom situations, from contract to eminent domain to going against the government. Just, all kinds of things. And recently, I've been drug into their courtrooms, and absolutely nothing that I have ever seen in my life before is occurring. So this goes back to about 25 years ago when various people that I knew, and I was on various radio shows and things like that in Central Florida, the Orlando area.
Yep.
And I told people then, as I've been telling them for the last 2.5 decades, there will reach a point where all the paperwork in the world that you submit to the courts will not work. And I may be approaching that stage of what's going on right now in 2 different courts.
Okay. Now, could you explain a little bit about certain cases that you've told me about that you've been involved with, like, for instance, the eminent domain case and the what happened in 1987 when you first did your notorious declaration?
Okay.
You're listening to Kate of Gaia on Critical Mass Radio. The game is up. Now, it's our turn.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. This is Christopher again. I'm actually stepping in for the first hour while Kate is doing another interview. And I've taken it upon myself to have a very good friend of mine, Jerry F. Kirk, on the show. I met Jerry in 2010 on the phone, and we become extremely good friends. And he is actually a phenomenal individual when it comes to the law, as he's known it for many, many years. Interestingly enough, I talked to him about Kate's documents, and he began to get to have a flavor of using them in a few court cases he had recently. We weren't able to get the wording as various people have had in their situations recently, but we've got near it. So I'm going to pass you over to Jerry and let him explain his background, and then we'll carry on from there and have him talk about what happened. So, Jerry, explain a bit about your background and your, how you were brought up and your father and so on, and a few of the instances in the past where you've done your paperwork and you got out the system as you knew it, and what happened recently.
Okay, well, first of all, thanks very much for allowing me to share with y'all. I do appreciate that, and I would like to point out that, through Chris's help, I've been able to receive some of the stuff that Kate has. I'm not on the Internet. I'm not connected as such. And the principles that Kate goes over in her letter with respect to contracts by Kate of Gaia, it's very resonant of what she is getting at. She is not using legalisms to explain what is going on, but she's got a whole lot of good stuff there. So this is what's attracted to me.
1987, and you said that you had a notorious declaration on you. Can you explain exactly what that means, that word, notorious declaration?
Okay. Well, most everybody says, well, I don't know what a notorious declaration is. They all say that, yet everybody in what we'll call America, they've heard of the Declaration of Independence. A Declaration of Independence is one of the types of a notorious declaration. You're declaring where you belong. And in my case, I declared as well as I could that I was under the jurisdiction of the Father. Now, my original notorious declaration has been redone 2 or 3 times because I found errors in them. Quite frankly, I cannot tell you of any work that I've ever done that doesn't have any errors in them. But I am constantly hunting to try and get rid of those mistakes, to say the least.
Yep. And you've actually been able to, up to last year, remove yourself from the system. Explain to the listeners exactly what you did and what you've been able to achieve.
Well, in the year 2000, I revoked all contracts with the state of Arkansas, and I canceled my power of attorney on the title to what at that time was a motor vehicle. I reclassified that as a private conveyance. And the Father's Law says unequivocally that we are not allowed to pay tribute, toll, or custom. Most people do not look up the word custom in the antiquity language, going back to the time of Christ, and find out that that means insurance. They do read where Matthew was removed from the desk or the receipt of custom by the Christ. It doesn't say don't ever go there, but he removed him, got him out of the insurance racket. Nothing of any real substance occurred for 13 years. In other words, I conveyed around